Ba-da-ba-ba, ba-da-ba-ba. All right. Promoter 101. 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 Promoter 101.
This is Mike Ducharme with AEG Presents in Kansas City, and we are on Promoter 101.
Spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of music industry, the thrill of sellouts, and the agony of cancellations and losses, the human drama of entrepreneurial spirit and competition. This is Promoter 101's Wide World of Business.
Welcome. That was our tip of the hat to the 70s Wide World of Sports intro. It's Promoter 101, episode 62, and I'm your anchor, Dan Steinberg. And now with details of the week's show, your man on the street, Luke Pierce. Luke?
Thanks, Dan. I'm reporting from Aspen Live, deep in the heart of the Rockies, to bring you cutting edge in ticketing, as we're joined today by the president of Ticketmaster North America, Jared Smith. Coming up right after the news of the week, and a war story from Opus 3's Sarah Pelch.
Hey, this is Mike Luganbill,
Lenore Kinder,
Tony Conway,
Joe Atamian,
Nick Gold,
Jay Williams, Adam Voith.
You're listening to Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
We continue our world tour. Catch us when we come to a town near you.
On deck next for us is the FlyCon conference in the Big Easy. On January 16th at 2 p.m., Promoter 101 is going to be live with a special guest from Locken and Brooklyn Bowl, Mr. Peter Shapiro.
And follow us on Twitter. I'm at The Jew. The show's Promoters 101. That's plural, Promoters 101. And Luke is W. Luke Pierce.
And we want to hear from you. Dan and I are always talking, and it doesn't have to be like that. Send us an email with your ideas, your thoughts, your comments about this podcast to steiny@promoter101.net. We can't wait to hear what's on your mind, and we promise to respond to every inquiry in a timely manner because, you know what? You matter to us.
Hey, this is Rob Zaffarelli.
Patty Ann Tarleton.
Paul Lord. Phil Rodriguez.
Rick Greenstein.
Donatas Nachayos.
Rob Pellet. Rich Mills. Sasha Bombaji.
Seth Hurwitz. Steve Martin.
Whitney Bond.
This is Trip Brown.
Wayne Forte.
Steve Zapp.
Trevor Solomon.
You live on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
If you've missed any of the past podcasts, you can always catch up at Promoter101.net. This week, we feature a special reissue of episode 19, starring Live Nation's head of country, Brian O'Connell. That's right, B-O-C. And hip-hop power agent, Jamie Adler. Little known fact, Jamie's brother is Steven Adler, drummer for Guns N' Roses. And if you haven't heard it, it's new to you.
And if you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe to Promoter 101 wherever you podcast. And please, help us spread the word about this podcast. Tell a friend. Drop us a review on iTunes. It really helps us out.
This is Eric Dimmenstein from Ground Control Touring. I'm on Promoter 101.
Dan, it's time for news of the week. Let's start up with a shakeup. This is the second week in a row in this podcast. We're talking about shakeups over at the agencies, and this time it's WME grabbing up the former APA head of comedy, Mike Berkowitz. He's going to be taking his roster of clients and include some of the top working comedians out there on the road. What are you hearing about this?
Mike is clearly the biggest agent in comedy. He's Amy Schumer's agent. He's got a roster that is just thick. Aziz, like, you can go down the names. If they're big in comedy, they're pretty much with him. This is going to be a huge shakeup, but they still have some major players and some deep weight at APA. You got Matt Burgess, you got Jackie Knob. They know the game, and they're still going to have a massive, massive game at APA in comedy, and they're going to step it up, and you're going to see those guys swinging for the fences. But this is big moves for William Morris, and this comes right after Scott Clayton bringing his team over. So you're just really seeing William Morris. They're fucking winning it right now.
They're winning. We were talking about this last night over at dinner. William Morris Endeavor is winning right now. I mean, the culture over there seems to be a place where they're inviting some of the best talented agents over in the world. And right now, it just feels like they are on a hot streak, and it doesn't seem like there's any end in sight.
You look at their bench, Joey Lee, Jay Williams. Mark Geiger has built this amazing team where you got guys like Don Mueller. It just doesn't end, and it goes for days. William Morris has so much talent. Robbie Frazier, Obolesky. It goes on and on. CJ Strzok. I can go for an hour naming the bench that he has built. It is incredible. A powerhouse. Just incredible.
Excited for Mike. We're certainly excited for the moves and Jackie and Max moving up into their positions as co-heads of comedy at APA. A lot to be happening here.
In other news, the Greek is out to bid once again in Los Angeles. The city has decided they're going to keep it as an open venue, so they're only inviting management companies to submit for the new RFP, and this is going to be a 10-year deal this time. SMG looking to be bought by Live Nation. That's going to be an interesting factor if that plays into it at all, because Live Nation could be the company that owns the management company that currently has it if the SMG is able to keep it. So this could be interesting on how this plays out.
This was such a monumental shift when they had the first RFP out a couple of years ago and the Greek went away from Nederland. And now to see where this thing goes, I mean, this could be a big shift into play. The Greek Theater is one of those venues, outdoor venues in LA that you absolutely want to be playing. And so whoever's going to be controlling that room at the end of the day is going to have a lot of leverage in some conversations. So it'll be really interesting to see how this shakes out.
Yeah, it's a top 10 venue in the world of must plays. Radio City, Red Rocks, The Gorge, The Greek, Royal Albert Hall. It's part of that meticulous list of bands are like when they have that signing meeting with a major agent. These are the rooms I want to play over the next course of my career. It's like saying, get me on the lineup at Coachella. This is one of those things must do if you want to sign me. So we're going to see something interesting happen here. I got to tell you, if you haven't seen a show at The Greek, take a moment. It's magnificent.
It really is. It's one of my favorite venues in the world to play, and it's certainly my favorite venue in Los Angeles. Lucky enough to live there for, half a decade and saw plenty of shows there, including some of yours that you promoted in that room. It's just an amazing place to see shows.
Your favorite venue in Los Angeles, better than the Mint.
Better than the Mint. Only when Craigie Fresh is playing at the Mint will I stomp down to that place. Get him and Andrew Lanois back on stage, and I'll be in the Mint in a heartbeat.
What else is going on?
So, another story that we've been talking about here, it seems like the ongoing saga of Songkick here. Now, obviously, Songkick and Ticketmaster are currently in a lawsuit that's been pushed back to a court date sometime in February. But we're learning today from Amplify Magazine's Dave Brooks doing some reporting that an investment banker who was hired by Songkick approached an executive at Live Nation this past June, meaning Songkick was trying to sell themselves to Live Nation during the middle of this lawsuit this past year, and it was a pitch that was apparently very quickly rejected here. Of course, Songkick sold off the Discovery platform to Warner Music Group, but they've got the ticketing side of things that they're currently disputing here with Live Nation. So behind everybody's back and behind this whole conversation, there's a little bit of subterfuge going on here. They're trying to sell the ticketing division into Live Nation. And of course, Live Nation quickly said no here.
Do you think that might have to do with something with the fact that they're in a lawsuit with them right now?
I would love to been a fly on the wall on whatever the phone call or whatever form the pitch took to hear how Live Nation said no to that, because you got to realize how bold is that? You're going to settle this lawsuit at the end of the day, but in the meantime, we're going to write you a check? Like, what is the thinking in this line of thought? I'm really honestly shocked by this.
It sounds like a little bit of desperation, but in all fairness to Songkick, I don't know that there's anything they can do at this point, no matter how the suit settles, that's going to end with them saving their company. I think this is just a matter of how the debt settles out to the debtors and the creditors.
Right. Well, there's just not many buyers left for that company. I think the end goal of this lawsuit really isn't about to return value to investors, because there's been a ton of money poured into that Songkick to crowd surge together as a company, and they're going to write down those investments at the end of the day. I think what this lawsuit really is about trying to break up ticketing in America and try to make it more of like the service that we see in the United Kingdom, where it's less about the exclusivity of things. I think it's really going to be a precedent-setting challenge and almost a coup de grace from Songkick's perspective of this is our lasting impact in the world of ticketing here in the United States. I don't think it's about the money anymore, Dan.
Seems like there's a lot of big news going out there this holiday season. What else are you seeing in the press?
New York Times had a pretty big expose this week on the state of complicity under Harvey Weinstein and how he basically facilitated his network of repugnant behavior for a very long time.
Are we not saying allegedly anymore?
I guess we should be saying allegedly. This is
in all fairness, hundreds of women probably can't be wrong, but
right. I'm a big proponent of where there's smoke, there's fire, and I certainly in this situation tend to believe all the women that have came forward in this, but I think allegedly might be appropriate in this. But the important takeaway that I took from this expose was how involved some of the major agencies, particularly CA, was involved in helping Harvey to facilitate some of this behavior for a very long time. Whether Harvey was sending business to them or whether agents were setting up meetings with their clients with Harvey. CA is named multiple times in this article in a pretty scathing way. Brian Lord named, co-head of talent over at CAA and a managing partner over there, named as somebody that had contacted Ronan Farrow, who did the initial expose piece. He tried to facilitate a meeting with Ronan Farrow and Harvey at Harvey's request. A lot of people in the business really named in this article. It's pretty scathing. And I think that this article about the enablers of Harvey Weinstein naming CAA is going to have some ramifications in the hallways and the water coolers over at CAA.
I don't want to make light of what's going on in the industry at this moment. I haven't read the article, and these are obviously serious allegations and should be very interesting to see how this plays out as time goes on. But CAA being one of the most upstanding businesses in entertainment, I imagine that this is a moment where you're going to see them act very maturely on how they handle this.
I think so too. And I think that turning a culture around in a company and using this as an example to really examine themselves and what they are doing over there as a company is going to be a moment over there. There's no major agencies that have ever been run by a woman, and I think that speaks to probably some of the cultural issues that might be occurring at some of these agencies. But I think this article, more than anything, is going to force CAA to have to look at themselves a little bit differently.
Well, we have a lot of friends over there, and I trust that they'll come through this and they're going to handle themselves in grace and amazing dignity, because those guys are professionals through and through. We have a fact correction from last week's episode. During the John Huey interview, I credited CAA to being the first agency to ever have in-house marketing department to oversee touring. It's been brought to my attention by Mr. John Ditmore that prior to CAA starting the in-house marketing in the mid-90s, Pinnacle Entertainment had created tour marketing position in 1992. And we want to give credit where credit is due. So, John, thanks for dropping us a note and correcting us on that error.
We appreciate all of our listeners out there checking us on these things. If you hear anything, again, you can email us at steiny@promoter101.net.
And how cool is it that John Ditmore listens to the podcast?
It's pretty awesome, right?
Right? Happy to point out the correction and get to say, John Ditmore listened and dropped us a note. Feeling pretty cool about that.
I'm feeling pretty great about that.
Hello, this is Sarah Mertz.
Rick Barrow.
Nick Light.
Mark Geiger.
This is Lee Anderson.
Kevin Lyman.
Joan Giddings.
Jim Runge.
Jeff White. Brian Zisk. Chuck Randall.
Brian O'Connell.
Andrea Johnson.
Adam Parsons.
Darielle Hyatt.
Ben Mensch.
Jamie Miller.
Billy Wayne Davis.
Brandon Frankel.
Mitch LaFon.
Jake Gould. Gary Smith.
Jeff Cohen.
You are on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
And Dan, let's take a moment to shine a spotlight on Entourage Talent's Wayne Forte. He's been doing this longer than I've been alive and representing some of the best acts on the planet. Plus, he's an incredible mentor and a business person, making him this week's Promoter 101 Badass of the Week. Congrats goes out to you. Well deserved, Wayne.
Hello, this is Sarah Mertz. I work at Eventbrite, and you are listening to Promoter 101.
This week's war story comes from Opus 3's Sarah Pelch.
Promoter 101. Sarah Pelch, welcome. What do you got for us?
Thanks. So classical music war stories might be a little different. I was working with a very famous pianist who sells out wherever he goes. He was playing in a new hall, Strathmore, which had just opened in Bethesda, Maryland. And his recital was the next day. The day before his recital, he had two pianos on stage, and he was supposed to select which piano he liked, which pianists do. They do a piano selection. And I got a call from the presenter, Washington Performing Arts, and they said he hates both pianos and says the piano tuner is incompetent. And this was a piano tuner who works at a major cultural institution, like global. And so the only way he would do his sold-out recital the next day is if we overnighted his favorite piano from New York and his favorite piano technician from New York. So I called Steinway. I said, how can we get this piano down to D.C., like overnight? She's like, I don't know how I can get a truck. I don't know how I can get piano movers. I don't know. Let me work on it. Then I had to call the piano technician and say, I know you have a life and I know you have jobs and a family, but I need you to get on a train in a couple hours and go down to DC. And it all happened. And then, of course, the pianist said he's not going to pay for any of these expenses. It's not coming out of his fee, because if he's booked to do a piano recital, he needs an adequate piano. The end.
Per the contract, I assume, too, right?
The pianos were okay for other artists, but not for him. So that was a stressful day.
So did the presenter pay for that, or did you guys want to beat in the cost of the piano?
So the presenter paid for part of it, and it went out of our commission.
Because it is a service business, and you're there to make the client happy and pull the show off.
Absolutely. Make the client happy and work with that presenter again.
Cool, that's awesome. Will you tell me who the artist is?
No.
Okay, well, I had to ask, right?
Yes.
What a great story, Sarah. Thanks so much for taking the time and sharing with us.
This is JJ Kasiri from Circle Talent Agency, and you're listening to Promoter 101.
In our feature interview this week, Dan is going to sit down for a one-on-one interview with the president of Ticketmaster North America, Jared Smith, live from the Aspen Live Conference at the Limelight Hotel in Aspen, Colorado.
We have Jared Smith with Ticketmaster with us today. Please give him a hand and welcome him. Over the past few years, I've had the opportunity of interviewing some really fun people here, and there's never a better setting than Aspen because you guys are an amazing audience and a great incubator for asking questions and know what's going on with the business. In the past, it's been people like Steve Martin and Alex Hodges, last year Jay Marciano, Mike Luba, Shapiro. But today should be fun because the topic of ticketing is clearly where the money is in our industry, and there really isn't anybody better to talk to about that than the person that is running the biggest ticket company in North America, and Jared is that. So when it comes to ticketing, there is no bigger. Are you nervous?
Should I be?
Yeah, you fucking should be, man. I mean, Strasburg's there. You got Rick there. I mean, there's a lot of people in this room. Yeah, it's like Rand Levy is definitely going to ask you something that's fucked up. It's going to happen. I don't know what Vince is going to ask. It's like, oh my God, it's going to be a fun day.
I was warned in advance for sure.
All right, with that said, let's jump into this a little bit. All seriousness, I talked to some of the people that know you best. Bob Rue said, Jared Smith has simply put, revolutionized Ticketmaster. He's a true partner for me and is a visionary in the product creation, is helping me to significantly grow our concert business, which turns to the benefit of all stakeholders involved. It's pretty cool.
I'm not sure it's accurate, but it's cool.
David Marcus sent me like a 3-page quote, but basically said what you've done in 39 years on the planet is amazing. And by the time you turn 40, is going to change the world.
That's very nice as well.
Jeff Karn says
the checks are in the mail.
Right.
Nice, thank you.
Jeff Karn says you're the hardest working man he knows, easy to talk to, laser focused on the fan experience.
Coming from Jeff Carnes, who I would put in my top 5 of the hardest working people that I know. That's high praise for sure.
All right, this guy doesn't work for you, so this could be a little bit more fun. Ticketfly's founder, Andrew Druskin, said, bad career choices happen to good people. We've got a job for Jared here at Eventbrite as soon as he finishes his 12-step program at Ticketmaster.
Well played, Andrew.
Welcome to Aspen. We got your job offer right off the bat. Michael Rapino says, Jared is a superstar that I love and respect, and is loved and respected by all his employees. He has done 10,000 hours in ticketing and has been the driving force behind building a great world-class team that has poised Ticketmaster for the future as of 2017, looking to be our biggest year in our 40-year history. A true leader that puts the team ahead of himself and, more importantly, found the right balance between being an incredible father and husband. It's high praise from the biggest guy in the highest office of the game.
Yeah, borderline embarrassing. All of those collectively, but hopefully I'll have an opportunity through this to say thanks and express my gratitude for how fortunate I've been, because most of what led me here was dumb luck and good timing, I think.
Let's jump right into it. Let's talk about your early days from journalism school at the University of Iowa to Columbus, Georgia, to Birmingham, to Moline, to Charlotte, to Atlanta. Give us a quick tour through your early days in the biz.
Yeah, sure. I'm like a lot of people that kind of fell into the business. When we were coming up, there wasn't as many sport management schools or certainly live entertainment schools. I went to the University of Iowa. I majored in journalism and political science. Classic.
Go Buckeyes.
Yeah, go Hawkeyes. Hawkeyes.
I'm a duck. Whatever.
Please don't go Buckeyes.
This is going great.
That's going to take this in a completely different direction. So yeah, journalism, political science. You know, the classic training for running a really big portion of a publicly traded company. Went to the University of Iowa. Went back to my hometown as an intern at what they call a sports commission, which is, for those of you who don't know, is a convention and visitors bureau that is concentrated on bringing sporting events, participatory sporting events instead of conventions, to create an economic impact on their local community, which is a long way to say I got to know the people who were running the facilities in town, right? Because we would want to bring a youth volleyball tournament or a youth soccer tournament into the community, and you would take that to the local facility and negotiate a deal and whatnot. And I got to know a guy named Charlie Schilling, who was at the Mark of the Quad Cities at the time in Moline, Illinois. It's gone by several sponsored names since then. I'm not sure what it's called right now, but I got to know Charlie, who was somebody who had gone to college with one of my older brothers. I'm the youngest of 5 boys. And later on in my career, just several years later, in fact, contract. I started to run that little organization, and Charlie ended up at an arena in Columbus, Georgia, and he had me come down because he needed a marketing person, more or less. I was several years out of school, young, didn't know anything about the business other than what I'd done back in Iowa, and Charlie recruited me down to Georgia, which was warm and golf friendly in January, and Davenport, Iowa, and Moline, Illinois are not golf friendly in January. So I went down and I did 2 years with him. And in a really, really quick fast forward to my time at Ticketmaster, we were on a non-Ticketmaster platform. We did an RFP. We brought Ticketmaster in. And through that process, I got to know the folks at TM. And Kenneth Feld is coming up after me. I applied for a job as a regional booker for Feld Entertainment, and they didn't hire me.
Is he in the room? We got to figure out why that happened.
No. He's right in front of me. I interviewed for 2 jobs, and one was with Feld. They didn't hire me, and the other was with Ticketmaster, and they didn't hire me either.
Kenneth, would you reconsider?
I think he'd have to hire me now. So that's my story. I applied for the job, which was an open general manager job in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I didn't get it because the job was being vacated actually by Jeff Carnes, who runs our venues and promoters division at Ticketmaster today. But Jeff was being promoted from Charlotte to Seattle, so he went to Seattle, and Kim Brandt, who's still with Live Nation to this day, was the general manager in Birmingham, and she went to Charlotte. So I didn't get the Charlotte job, and they called and said, would you go to Birmingham and do that? And Birmingham at the time was literally the smallest market in the country for Ticketmaster. It was 250, 300,000 tickets. Today we'll do 500 million tickets globally. So it was a small starter gig, to be sure, and I took it. I was ready to do something else. I was ready to get into technology, and I showed up in Birmingham, and that was the start of a 15-year journey with TM.
From middle America to the biggest market in the country. You're not really known for being a guy to be the center of attention, kind of hidden usually. How do you let your hair down?
I have short hair, so it's infrequent at best. Yeah, listen, I love music. I love sports, and I work in a business that's good for both. But on the weekends, I got 2 little girls. I got an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old who I adore. We try and ski where we can, and we live in Manhattan Beach, so we play a lot of tennis. We spend a lot of time on the beach, and yeah, family time is kind of that is letting the hair down for me.
Getting you on the phone has got to be one of the hardest things I've ever tried to do. Your assistant is amazing.
It's not for everybody, just for you. Only for 27-year partners and clients.
Touche, motherfucker. Why the fuck are you?
Kenneth calls. I take his call every time.
I would too. You were like the Kaiser Soze of fucking Ticketmaster. What's the fucking deal?
How does one respond to that? I don't even know. I'm not that hard to get a hold of, or at least I shouldn't be. It's been a busy year. It's been a really busy year. But,
so the trick is to call Jeff Carnes and then David Marcus and Jeff Carnes 2 more times.
There you go. Those are some good ones to track me down. We're busy. We'll talk about a lot of the things that we're doing at Ticketmaster, but it literally has been the busiest year in the 15 years that I've been there on a number of fronts. Not the least of which is the amount of product that we've put out, the amount of business that we had up for renewal. We renewed, 35% of our business in North America this year. We redid deals with each of the North American sports leagues, the NHL, the NFL, and soon to be the NBA. In addition to 3 of our top 5 single customers, all of which were up in 2017. So it's been a crazy year just to keep the business growing, and we've been really, really successful with that. So we're proud of it. But yeah, we're coming down to the end of the year, so it's a little easier to sneak away and do some fun stuff like this.
Well, we appreciate you're here nevertheless. For a guy that is so hard to get on the phone, though, you don't work in an office. You're out in the open at a table working freely. That seems to be contradictory.
Yeah, maybe. The entire company at Ticketmaster, for the most part, is in an open office environment. I sit at an open desk next to my assistant and across from my CTO, and my COO is 2 desks away from that. So it's not just me; it's the entire executive team. And
it's like a wine club or something.
There's occasionally wine and drinks. But, listen, the business has changed so much through the years that the office environment just didn't suit itself to the way that we were communicating as a team. And we did it consciously because we were doing it throughout the entire organization. We were very traditional. We had lots of offices around the perimeter of each of our floors. Then we had lots of cubes in the middle and high walls and privacy and all that kind of stuff. But we got to a point where we don't even put a phone on the desk of most of our employees because that's not what they do. It's not how they communicate. They're communicating through meetings wherever we can.
Is that why I can't get you on the phone? You don't have a fucking phone? $18 service fees on my ticket. You can't afford a fucking phone?
I walked into that one, I think. Yeah, for sure walked into that one. Anyways, I'll get back to my point, which was we're very collaborative as a company, and we wanted workspace that was that lent itself towards that collaboration. So everybody, I get a lot of questions around, like, why aren't you on the phone? Aren't you on the phone all day doing deals? And that's not how we interact as a group.
So can any Ticketmaster employee that works in that building just walk up to you and talk to you at any time? Is that an open door policy?
Sure.
Does it happen?
All the time.
So you're about to be 40. You've been at Ticketmaster for 14, 15 years. That's a huge part of your life and your career.
Mm-hmm.
Some pretty good job security.
Yeah, listen, it's been 90% of my career, for sure. I consider myself incredibly fortunate to have had the ride and the journey that I've had, and it's mostly attributable to good timing and good people. So yeah, I listened, 14 years in June was my anniversary. I'll be 15 years next year. And I'm coming up on 5 years next year in the president's role. So, and I'll also be 40 next year. So there's some balance in there somewhere, I think. But I've just been really, really fortunate both before the merger with Live Nation and after the merger with Live Nation. Early in my career, I was young and I was mobile and had a reputation, I think, increasingly with the folks in corporate and people like Marla Ostroff, who still works for us and has been an incredible mentor to me through the years, to that I was willing to go solve problems. So they would call and they would say, "Hey, do you want to go solve the problem in Virginia?" And usually before they said where, I'd say yeah. I was young, mobile. I was married to a woman who was an amazing teacher. That made her mobile because she was a special ed teacher and she could go teach anywhere. So we did a lot of moving. In those years, we went from Iowa to Columbus, Columbus to Birmingham, Birmingham to Virginia, Virginia to Charlotte, Charlotte to Atlanta. And we did that all in the first 7 years that I was with the company.
You could have been at radio.
We could have been in that or the military. But we didn't sit still for very long. That just kept it super interesting to me. I was always being presented with new challenges in a little bit bigger market and a little bit different set of circumstances. And it gave me that ability, I think, early in my career to push myself beyond my comfort zone because I was increasingly getting, bigger pieces of responsibility that just pushed you that little bit more and kept you interested. It was an amazing experience.
Well, to build on that, it seems like you've created opportunities for yourself and haven't really seemed to wait, but you've made things happen.
I've certainly been willing to take on those challenges for sure. You get the opportunities, and then the opportunities, and that might be timing or that might be luck, and then you try and make good on them. And I think I've been fortunate to make good on them in a lot of respects and take those opportunities and turn them into something. But I just can't underscore, for me, this is, as you guys all know, right? I mean, this is a business that is purely based on relationships, and you're as good as the people that you interact with feel that you are in terms of a partner or a boss or an employee or a husband or a father or those types of things. So I've always been very, very careful about trying to build relationships in a way that was meaningful, in that I took care of the people who took care of me and vice versa. And ultimately, I've had a lot of breaks, as I just described, up until the merger with Live Nation, but it led to my biggest break, which was an introduction really to Nathan Hubbard, shortly after the merger, which was really a product of a guy named Dave Butler, who many of you know ran Paciolan for a long time. And we had bought Paciolan as part of growing the business. Sean Moriarty was running the Ticketmaster business at the time. He had bought Paciolan to get into the college athletic business. And then we sold Paciolan through the process of the merger with Live Nation.
Would have been great had you been able to fix their system while you had them.
Dave was a wonderful guy. And when Dave was going back to run Paciolan after we sold it through the divestiture, he said some very nice things about me to Nathan. And Nathan called up very shortly after the merger, and we hit it off. And I had some very strong opinions about things that were working pre-merger and things that I think we had to change going forward past the merger. And he, those ideas and those conversations turned into him giving me an opportunity to do a much bigger role at TM literally months after the merger. And it turned into the chief operating officer job that I did from 2010 until 2013 when he left, and I was able to take a big portion of his chair.
Let's turn the conversation from you personally to maybe ticketing, as I think a lot of people want to hear your views on ticketing and what's coming from Ticketmaster. Of your competitors, who does it best in your opinion?
It depends what you're talking about.
Well, if you want to go the other way, who do you think does the worst? You probably want to answer the other question.
No. Competition we talk about a lot internally because it's increasingly a competitive space. You've been...
In all fairness, just so you know, how many people in the room are ticketing people? Will you raise your hands?
All right.
Good. I know you can't see it on the internet, but it's probably a good 20% of the room.
Yeah. Yeah, no. Listen, I just in one room just in one segment, which is music. There's 6 or 7 people from 6 or 7 different ticketing companies. So after 15,
I guess I should ask Nest who else is looking for jobs at Ticketmaster.
After 15 years, it's more competitive today than it's ever been, and it's increasingly gotten that way. And you see that in the flow of venture and private equity money that's flown into the system over the last 7, 8, 9 years. I think the most stark thing for us is that it's literally almost impossible to answer that question. Who does it best? Because every portion of this business has gotten more and more specialized. And I think that is the arc of the Ticketmaster story under Live Nation, which is, Ticketmaster stood for one thing for a very, very long time, which was software for venues, relatively the same software for all venues. And, those part of that software was to sell tickets to the fans. And we sold it all the same way, whether you were buying a GA ticket or a festival ticket or a sports ticket or a season ticket. It was kind of one size fits all, which, increasingly these days is one size fits none. So if you ask me who's got the best consumer experience, who's got the best marketplace, who serves fans the best, my answer is going to be very, very different than if you ask me who does the best job in performing arts, back office software. It's just an incredibly complex, specialized system across the entire business today. And in each one of those verticals, there are several competitors. Ticketmaster is unique in that we're one of the few, if not the only, that literally competes in almost every one of those spaces. We compete on the software side within clubs and small venues and DIY and sports and season tickets and family events and music and big venues and small. And then we compete on the other side with a whole different set of people in terms of secondary market and direct to consumer with the StubHubs of the world and so on and so forth. So it's a really complex business. And for us, a big portion of what we're trying to do with the company and what we've been trying to do with the company for 7 years has been to not be the jack of all trades, master of none. It's to try and become really, really competitive and specialized in each one of those spaces and understand what each of those customers need. And this is the greatest lesson that I've learned from Michael Rapino, who's been an amazing leader on so many things. But his mantra with us is always break it down. You can't compete with all of those people unless you have people that are dedicated and wake up every day trying to compete in that space and that space only. So a big portion of why we have a portfolio of products today from Frontgate to TicketWeb to Ticketmaster is a big portion of that push from him to get really, really specialized to do that. None of that answered your question, which was who does it best as a competitor? There are lots of great companies out there doing lots of really, really interesting things on all of those fronts. And you've named many of them. There's things that Eventbrite does really great. There's things that AEG does great. There's things that StubHub does great. There's lots of great companies doing good stuff. And in turn, that makes us better. The competition pushes us to continue to innovate and continue to invest and do better.
As a promoter, I get a phone call at least 5 or 6 times a year saying, we have amazing money backing us. We'll write you this awesome check. Come sign with us. When is your deal up? It's not, let me show you your software. Let me write you a huge fucking check. It's always their opening line. I don't know how these companies get financed, but it's got to be, I'm sure a lot of people are taking their money because these people are signing people, but that's their opening line. It's their pitch. My pitch usually tends to be, I can sleep at night because Ticketmaster's going to be there tomorrow, which is why we've been with you so long.
Yeah, listen, I think our reputation is not just that we're going to be around, but it's that, it's not just about the deal currency, right? Don't get me wrong. The deals have gotten more expensive. I have yet to do a deal where I make more money on the renewal than I did on the deal that I was renewing.
I'm very happy about that from my side.
Quite literally. Thank you very much, Dan. But that being said, it's not about whether or not I can get an extra $1 or an extra 2 points of royalty on a single deal. It's about, are you going to help me sell more tickets and get into percentage more frequently on more shows? Am I going to get out of that show and that tour because I got them crossed and I need to get as many? It's about that. It's always been about who's going to make sure that I can sell those tickets on an ongoing basis. You're going to make much more money if you've got the proper tools, reach, marketing, distribution, so on and so forth, than if you get an extra $500,000 on a check. for just renewing your business. So
it's way more than $5,000.
500, 5,000, 5 million. For us, getting an understanding of what is going to help you move your inventory at the best price is, if we play that long game and we continue to invest in those tools, we think we can move the needle.
Honestly, we use all the systems because we play through the venues that have exclusives. So I've seen all the software. I prefer the Ticketmaster system. The software-wise, as far as it running, and most importantly, for our adult contemporary shows, it's the easiest for older adults to navigate it and buy tickets. It's AOL simple. And I think by design, right?
Yeah, absolutely by design. And getting simpler by the day, by the year. It's a huge push on our front to make sure that it's not just drop dead simple, but it's drop dead simple and it's specialized for what you're buying. And I think what you're going to see from us over the next couple of years is, even if it's subtle changes, but the way that I shop for Broadway, if I'm in New York and I'm going to be there for a weekend and I want to go look at 3 different shows, and I don't care which night I go because my plans are flexible, the ability to look across 3 different versions of The Lion King over 3 different days is a very different shopping experience than I want to go to a show tonight this weekend at different venues, and I'm willing to go to a different show for a different price at a different venue. I'm just looking for something to do this weekend, versus I'm shopping for Bonnaroo and I got to figure out it's only in one place and it's got different prices and different packages. Those are all very different shopping experiences, and we need to make it simple for all of those versus today, which is price, quantity, drop down, show me the best available. That's simple, but it doesn't actually help the consumer and doesn't actually drive conversion. So there's a balance in there between making sure that it's simple, but making sure that it's specialized enough to actually help the consumer buy what they want to buy.
That makes a whole lot of sense. Can we talk for a minute about your thoughts on the Eventbrite buying Ticketfly?
I think Julia Hartz, who runs Eventbrite, in that management team has done a phenomenal job of building that business up. And one of the things that they started with kind of DIY in a very specific space, or do-it-yourself ticketing on smaller events and registration-based stuff, and then they started to grow in verticals. They started to grow into endurance sports and a whole bunch of other things. And music and festivals were always one of the things that I think that they wanted to get into. So it made a lot of sense for them. I think more broadly, you're seeing some consolidation in the space. And to your point of new entries and lots of money coming in, ticketing is still a game that is technology based and requires a lot of investment. Requires investment in terms of technology to stay up and stay current and be able to move as fast as the market is moving. And it requires investment in terms of deal capital, to secure business and sign that up. So as much money flows in and there's 5 new companies that come in and compete each year, it's tough to get to that next level of scale where you can get to profitability and then continue to reinvest and really gain some steam. So I think one of the things that you're seeing, that's a good example of, but you're seeing in other cases in the ticketing space as well, is some consolidation, right? You're seeing bigger players team up with some smaller players to get more specialization, more technology, more scale around their book of business so that they can continue to invest. I think you'll probably see more of that as this year, 2018 develops and beyond.
Was it a good buy for them? In your opinion,
not accounting for Andrew's quote, I think what he built at Ticketfly was really good or really special. I think he did an amazing job of appealing to as an example of somebody who woke up every day and said, we want to be in this space and this space only, smaller music venues, promoters, and we want to do that well and we want to appeal to that. It's pretty tough to argue with the results of the business that he built. So I think Andrew in and of himself is a pioneer and innovative and a really good leader, and I think they built a good business. And I think Eventbrite does a lot of things well too. So you put them together, I think it's interesting.
I'll let it off at that. Who's your client? Is it the artist? Is it the venue? Is it the promoter? Or is it the ticket buyer?
Yes. It's all of those. And listen, not to get overly come across as a sales guy with what we've done at Ticketmaster, but I think that question is actually, it is the story of kind of what's transpired at Ticketmaster over the course of my career there, culturally, technology, and otherwise. I think when I first got into the business, and I first came from a venue that had done a venue RFP for a ticketing provider to the ticketing company, I mean, that was what Ticketmaster served primarily. Not exclusively, but primarily. We served the venue. That was the DNA of the company. As we woke up every day, and this is what I did in Birmingham, I did it in Virginia, I did it in Charlotte, I did it in Atlanta. We woke up every day and we signed up venues. And the people who played in the venue, whether it was Kenneth and the Feld folks, or even the sports team, and certainly the artist, that was the secondary concern. So long as you, and the fan, by the way, the end consumer was the secondary concern, because as long as you signed up the venue, all of the rest of that came along with you.
But is this part of the problem? Is there's so many bosses that you have to answer to? You can't possibly fucking answer that question?
No, I'll do my best to answer it after I do.
Well, no, but I'm curious. I mean, it seems like at any given moment you've got to answer to all of us.
There's conflicts. There's inherent conflicts in all of those things, which is why I think you see a lot of specialization in the space that is really interesting, right? It's why you see a secondary market appeal to fans in a way that many of the primary market sites can't appeal to fans, because they don't have the same rules, they don't have the consideration. The secondary markets wake up every day with one goal in mind, and one goal in mind only, which is, how do I have as much inventory, as many options, as much access as I can for the consumer. They don't worry about, is that good for the ecosystem? Is it good for the artist? Is it good for the long-term health of our business? They worry about the consumer and only the consumer. So there's always lots of inventory. There's always lots of prices. There's always lots of options. And we always don't have that ability to make that choice, because we're playing a long game with an artist partner or a sports team partner or the venue. So, to my earlier point, what's transpired at Ticketmaster, largely as a result of the influence of the Live Nation merger, was this other lens that Ticketmaster didn't have on the business, which was the content lens. Live Nation being, and Michael being the guy who wakes up the most thinking about, how do I serve the artist every day and make sure that I'm playing the long game with that artist, because I believe that serving the content will help me serve my business and serve it well. And number two, he was the promoter who was trying to get closer to the fan, and that mattered to him in a different way than I was securing venue contracts. So infusing that DNA into Ticketmaster, and then saying, okay, and I understand, Jared, that those things are sometimes in conflict. It means that you have to have people on your team every day that wake up thinking about each of those constituencies, each of those stakeholders, even if sometimes that is fraught with conflict internally. And we had those conflicts. It's not uncommon in my staff meeting for somebody who's running the resale business and somebody who's running the primary business and somebody who's running our marketplace to sit there and go, how are we going to tackle this problem? Because my client wants this, but that's going to hurt our marketplace, or that's going to potentially make it less convenient for a fan to buy those tickets. And it's a unique place to play. You can't get perfection, and you can't always line those things up. But I actually think it creates an environment for us where, listen, we're 41 years into this, and we want to be around for another 40 years. So not everything is perfect, but you shave off enough of imperfection to try and get the right mix of solution for the industry as a whole. Because all of the people you just mentioned are all stakeholders in the industry. And if the industry doesn't solve its own problems and isn't healthy for the long term, we take that responsibility seriously, because we sit in the middle of it. So,
well, yeah, you guys seem to be the ones that get kicked in the teeth every time something goes wrong publicly. And as a promoter, I want to thank you for that, by the way.
You can buy me a drink. That sometimes is frustrating for us. And I think it's been well documented that it was a service offering for a long time, right? It was something that Ticketmaster did on behalf of the business. It knew that it did it on behalf of the business, and the business was indeed appreciative of that. In today's environment,
it's one of my favorite options that we opt in on.
I don't know if it's spelled out in the contract, take it in the teeth, but But I think longer term, you know, the sustainability of the business is to try and find that balance. And you know, one of the things that it helps us aspire to be is transparent, because we want people to understand what their options are. Is this resale? Is it primary? What prices are available to you? How many tickets, you know, or can we get into the hands of real fans? A lot of the products that we're building today. I mean, if you look at TM Plus, which has been, you know, in some respects controversial within the music business, that's a great example of us saying we can service both masters, even though it's counterintuitive. So the thing that people don't really understand about TM Plus, put this in perspective for a minute, is think about this. A 40-year-old business or 37-year-old business at the time that we launched TM Plus, and the largest ticketing provider in the world. Jay-Z goes on sale, or Beyonce goes on sale, or Justin Timberlake, or U2, or the Eagles. And on Saturday morning, you know, 1 minute in, or 5 minutes in, or 10 minutes in, the show is sold out. And all in sometimes 3 months in advance, sometimes now a year in advance. So you would get an email from Ticketmaster, your weekly ticket alert email, on a Wednesday, and it would be filled with all of the shows that didn't sell out. By definition, we would send you an email every week of all of the shows that weren't the most popular, that weren't the most in demand. And that's I
get the same email from Gold Star.
It's a really and it's, listen, that doesn't mean that there aren't really great shows there, but it meant we didn't have all of the options, right? It'd be like going to the mall and you know, every time you went to the store, their most popular items they didn't have, and then you'd go next door. Increasingly over time, you'd go next door, and that guy had them. And that's what the secondary market represented to us, right? Was that we had a shift in fan behavior, because it used to be that when Jay-Z sold out, and if you didn't have Jay-Z tickets, I'd buy something else. Well, sooner or later, I didn't buy something else, because I could just go to secondary market and I could buy Jay-Z. And that long-term effect of I don't even check the primary market anymore because I have other options to buy the tickets was not a really good long-term sustainable business for us or for the industry. So TM Plus was really a twofold solution to that problem. Number one, it meant that we could continue to bring traffic back to the website for the most popular events. And increasingly, we thought we could bring more traffic back. And if we brought more traffic back and we brought them to a site that still had all of the primary inventory listed, they would buy more things. And it's worked. And we asked a bunch of people.
The Amazon of ticketing.
It's the Amazon of anything, right? The more, you know, Rufino is fond of saying stack them high and watch them buy. I mean, retailing 101, right? You want to go to the store that's got lots and lots of options for you. And we didn't have lots and lots of options. So TM Plus checked that box for us, where we could sell anything at any time. And our traffic on an enormous base that was always a leading base. You know, we've set a record each of the last 12, you know, trailing 12 months. We had 1 billion visitors to Ticketmaster. Traffic was up 30%.
Rising tides.
Rising tide floats all boats. So that's number one. Number two was, you start to think about, you know, the change in advertising and the competitive space of, I'm going to go by keyword search on Google to get people to come back to the website. That became really, really difficult for us to compete in that space, because you couldn't pay on shows where you didn't have any inventory. So the shows that didn't sell out, even though they were really good shows, you had, you know, 300 level inventory of an arena show, or you had back, you know, balcony at a theater show. There wasn't enough margin in the service fees for us, and we weren't sharing in the face value as a ticketing company. So we couldn't actually go compete to bring advertising there. Well, you throw some secondary inventory into that mix, and if I've got orchestra seats or I've got floor seats, I've got enough margin in that to go actually buy more advertising. And if I buy more advertising, there's a good chance that they're going to see a 300 level seat and they're going to buy a 300 level seat. So empirically, you know, we can show, you know, tour by tour, data by data, we actually sell more primary tickets on a show when resale is activated. And so show makes more money, the promoter makes more money, we've brought more traffic in, and we've brought more fans, and the fan is happier because they've got more options. So TM Plus is a great example. The first time you guys
said that to me, I didn't believe it.
Do you now?
I do. Jim McCarthy got us to do ticketing for some of our shows that weren't moving in California. They're really strong in California with Gold Star. And we put an allotment up and then took it off. And he said, watch what's going to happen in your first, once you put it on the secondary, People will see it, then they'll go to Ticketmaster and want to buy the better seat. You'll move your allotment through us, but then you'll move more tickets. It'll move tickets for you. We're good advertising. He was right. I now do buy into that.
Yeah,
it's great advertising.
No, it works almost universally, and it's it's a really good example of things that seem like they're in conflict actually working really, really well together. If you can get all of the right stakeholders around the table and create a solution that works for everybody.
How many tickets are you guys selling a year?
Globally, 2018 will be approaching 500 million. Excuse me. Globally.
Okay, and then
that's across
domestically
28 countries, somewhere $30 billion in gross transaction value, something like that.
Okay, and what are you guys selling here?
So just service chargeable tickets in North America. $500 million is total tickets through the network, both box office where we don't make fees, season tickets, that kind of stuff. In North America, we'll do 120 million.
Jesus Christ. How many clients does Ticketmaster have in North America?
It's 12,000 globally. Half of that, give or take, is North America, and recurring customers. Is kind of 60% of that, and then every year there's a big churn of one-off events. Festival starts, festival ends. An event starts, an event ends. But kind of the number that you'll hear is north of 10,000 customers a year globally.
And who's the most important customer?
You. You've got a mic in a podcast.
I'll take that. In 2010,
you can't get me on the phone, but you've got a podcast. So
I'll speak to you through the internet, my friend. In 2010, when Live Nation and Ticketmaster merged, and that came together, how did that affect the ecos of the two companies? Because it's two different corporate worlds.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the most substantial ways. Well, I'll take that in two parts. I think the biggest mark that the merger has made on Live Nation, in my personal opinion, has been the investment. Most people don't point to that. There are tons of things that I could point to that were benefits of putting the two companies together. Not the least of which is, we've got a really, really huge advantage that we have a partner that's willing to try things at scale. That's hard to get people to try. So when we do TM Plus, we've got somebody that can try that out with us and really help us learn from it, and we can kind of eat our own cooking and all of those types of things. That's an advantage. There are lots and lots of advantages, but I think the biggest impact has been on the investment that Live Nation's made into the Ticketmaster business, and I give Michael all the credit in the world. He recognized very, very early and went to the board and said, this is a business that's been historically underinvested in, specifically in a bunch of different ways, but specifically in terms of technology investment, and we're going to have to make really, really big investments in the business if we want it to be successful for another 40 years, and we want it to be able to be specialized to meet the needs of not just Live Nation but the rest of the business. And he's continued to make those investments, and as a result, we've been able to launch more product than in the last 7 years than we had certainly in the time before that. But we've completely rebuilt our infrastructure and our platform. We've completely rebuilt the marketplace in our consumer business and our consumer platform. We've been able to turn a business that was historically almost exclusively desktop to this year we'll do almost 70% of our traffic in mobile, and 40% of our tickets will be transacted in mobile. We've been able to invest in cutting edge, and what I think is one of the things that we're most proud of is our ability to do performance-based marketing today with some of the best e-commerce businesses in the world. That all took investment in automation and technology, and we've spent $100 million plus in incremental investment at the time that they made that investment early after the merger, and we've hired hundreds of new technologists and engineers and those types of things. So that investment, there's lots of things that culturally that changed how we view customers and all of those other stakeholders versus just venues. All of those things obviously changed the way that we view the business, but the difference maker for us has really been this investment in technology to be able to compete in all of these spaces and create new things like verified fan and paperless ticketing and digital ticketing and all the things that we're doing today.
So when we were all terrified of Live Nation owning the biggest ticketing company in the world because of the information and data, it actually turned out that they wound up investing so much money to make the system better for all of us.
Would you agree that that's what you've seen?
It is. It's not at all what I thought was going to happen. I was fucking freaking out like everybody else. Not as bad as Seth was, but I was terrified.
Live Nation runs a really big concert business, and they run a big festivals business, and they run a big comedy business, and they run a big club business. Each one of those have their own need sets. I mean, there's no bigger customer for me than Michael, right? He's both the boss of both of the business, but he's also a customer.
Is he your biggest customer?
Well, Live Nation is, yeah.
Okay, and you've referred to him several times already.
Yeah.
I assume you know him?
That quote was I wrote for him, he was nice enough to attribute it to himself.
How often do you guys interact?
Regularly. We've got a standing one-on-one weekly. He's very involved in the business. One of the things that I think is unique about Michael is this balance that he has, that I try and steal within my own group. But Live Nation runs a very decentralized business in many respects, right? So whether it's the festivals business or the concert business or the ticketing business or the artist management business, he gives you a lot of autonomy and he gives you a lot of resources. And the expectations are high that you're going to grow the business and you're going to be able to hit the number and do the things that you need to be able to do. But he gives you autonomy within which to do that. But he makes himself available, and he is available to us to help work through any problems, and we have a regular cadence to be able to do that. And in my case, it's a weekly basis. We're over there on Mondays strategizing and identifying problems and doing those types of things. So I think it's one of the things that has made the company really successful is as people have an acquisition has come in, or C3 comes back, or Insomniac, or there's some examples of that where we've brought people into the business that have really strong leadership, that are creative, entrepreneurial, those types of things, and the ability to kind of tap in to the benefits of the mothership and the benefits of the scale, or the benefit of the resources or the expertise that he's kind of woven into the business, yet not have that detract from your ability to be entrepreneurial or creative or run autonomously is super unique at a business that is that has this type of scale. So he's really adept at understanding where to push and where to pull and where to be a resource and where to give some freedom. And for me, unlike many of the people that have come into the organization through acquisition or otherwise, I've been a young executive that's kind of come up and tried to learn how to do that balance and try to learn how to run an organization that's, 500 million tickets and 2,500 employees and the things that we've got in North America. So it's a method that works really well because it works with somebody who's more established, and it works with somebody who is coming up, and I might need a little bit more interaction and a little bit more feedback than some, and it's really helped. It's really helped me get to the place where I feel confident and comfortable running the business the way that we need to be running the business in that way. So yeah, he's been great.
How you feeling so far? You all right?
Yeah,
hanging in there pretty good.
Yeah, I'm trying.
You guys okay? Yeah. All right. Take a breath. Take time with this one. Be easy. And go slow.
That's a scary intro to a question.
How are you combating the poor consumer reputation that Ticketmaster has?
You're assuming that I think it's poor.
Do you think the brand is poor?
Listen, we are not delusional at all about what the brand stands for. And at various times, even pre-merger and post-merger, in a lot of different respects, we've looked at the brand and we've done brand studies and we've brought people in to look at the brand and consult and how should we, what does it stand for? What is it good at? What is it bad at? And it doesn't. It's not a mystery that the brand has taken the hit from a consumer perspective. A lot of the things that we talked about earlier in the hour related to pricing or availability or fees or those types of things on behalf of the industry as a whole. Partially as a service. But whenever we do those studies, quantitatively or qualitatively, the results generally come back almost entirely consistent, which is the brand stands for trust, reliability, the percentage of brand recognition, unaided brand recognition. Do you know that the brand Ticketmaster and what it does is off the charts? It's a universally known brand, particularly in
you
North
guys are
America
basically
and
Google
UK.
for tickets.
Everybody knows it. So. And then when you put those things of trust, validation, verification, all of those things that are associated with transactional companies, those are really, really hard things to change. Where we have historically fallen down as a brand is around fees is the thing that people point to the most, and it certainly is there, but it's not actually the thing that people dislike most about Ticketmaster and the experience. The thing that they, without question, is at the top of their list is that I can't get good tickets. So I show up on Friday for the on sale for the show that I want to go to the most, Taylor Swift or otherwise, and I can't get good tickets. And I'm sitting there and I'm refreshing my button and I don't have enough computers and I don't have a shot and blah, blah. Those are the things that frustrate them, and that has an obvious impact on the brand. So, not coincidentally, we started shortly after the merger with Michael and Nathan and others, trying to attack the things that would make the experience better, knowing that those things would have, an impact on the brand overall. They'd have a trailing impact on the brand. So when you talk about TM Plus, ticket availability, when you talk about resale, you provided an opportunity to get the best tickets for the best shows. When you start to talk about more of the more recent investments that we've been making and things like Ticketmaster Presence, which we haven't talked about yet, but is all about identity, and Verified Fan, which is all about fair distribution of tickets. Those are all very specific. Work the problem backwards, and if you provide a great experience that rewards real people, you're going to solve a lot of those problems that are associated with the brand, because those are the things that they didn't like about their brand experience. So,
in all fairness, over the course of the last 10 and 15 years, the brand has become much, much stronger, both in the industry and publicly, at least from my point of view.
Yeah, no, listen, I appreciate that because it's meaningful from somebody who's been around the brand. You've been a customer for 25 plus years, 27 years, I think, to be exact.
That's right. I sold my first tickets with you while I was still in high school.
Every one of your deals has gotten better. I'll just keep pointing that out.
In my house and car reflect.
But it means a lot because we've worked really hard on that, and I think it's not that we just wake up and we say, hey, how are we going to spend money to make the brand better? We do some of that, right? But you haven't seen a big brand campaign come out over the last 7 years. That's we don't have TV commercials saying here's the new Ticketmaster. I hope that at some point we start to do more of that, and I think we will. But the effort has really been in how do we make the experience better? Because if we make the experience better, we will solve your problems as an industry, which means we're actually asking you more. What do you need as a music venue? What do you need as a promoter? What do you need as a sports team? And try and provide those tools and services for you. And I think we've done more and more of that. We're far from have solved all the problems, and we're far from perfect, but we've communicated, I think, in a much more specialized way and in a much more intuitive way for people to be able to say they care, they listen, and I actually see some of that product coming out. And that product leads to better solutions for the fan. And I think as a result of that, we're the brand image and what I can do at Ticketmaster is starting to change.
Let's talk about that, the fan. You guys obviously have to be taking scalping and bots very seriously. You spend a ton of money at that. How much have you spent? How much time are you spending battling bots and scalpers?
Yeah. I won't give you facts and figures.
You know about scalpers, right?
I've been told. that there's a problem there.
In actuality, should you really care? Because once the ticket's sold, you made your money.
Yeah, we care. Yeah, we care deeply because I think we are a long term. Yeah, so we are two businesses, and I think to put it in as clear terms as I can, we've got a software business that's got a bunch of verticals, and we have to solve pricing problems, which the scalper issue is an outcropping of for a big portion of that business, which is music, and then we are a marketplace business, and we serve consumers, and so long as we are not able to get them good tickets at prices that the content wants them to sell at, we're not going to be a successful consumer business for very long. So yeah, we care very, very deeply. And the problem is, as you guys well know, it's deep and it's wide, and there is so much money to be made that there is massive investment, not just in our ability to fight it, but there's massive investment in this arms race that we've been talking about as long as I've been in the business, to continue to get more and more sophisticated to gobble up those tickets, because there's lots of money to be made. So we've spent, I don't know how many, countless millions of dollars. And I think the bigger lost opportunity has been the time involved in doing that. But there are some fundamental things that have impeded our ability to get rid of bots once and for all, not the least of which is the intersection of supply and demand has still not been met. It's a very fancy way to say we still don't do a good enough job of pricing the tickets, which creates an arbitrage opportunity, which creates motivation for people to be nefarious and use bad tools to cheat.
And when you're talking about pricing the tickets, you guys don't do that. That's on me and the manager.
Yeah, between you and your stakeholder, who's you, the manager, the artist, the agent.
So just to be clear, when you're saying we're doing a bad job pricing, you mean I'm doing a bad job pricing?
Yes, the industry is doing a bad job of pricing. But it is one of the great misconceptions or misperceptions of our business that we continue to try and be more transparent.
I don't think we've ever
around.
consulted you guys on that unless we're talking about platinum, and then we take a great amount of time to listen to you guys. Yep. Jim, did you have a question, or were you telling me I needed to go to questions? Louis, did you have a question, or were you telling me I need to go to questions soon?
Both.
Okay, well, what's your question?
So I'm not a tech guy, and which was obvious by the person coming over to help me with my computer. But I, just as a neophyte, it seems weird that I would think that Ticketmaster has more money than any of the secondary companies in terms of being able to create technology to battle the bots. But when you see the number of bots that are in your system on a really high demand show, it's like 90% on the on sale or something like that. So my question is, isn't there enough money to battle those bots, like to get technology that's better than theirs?
The short answer is no. It's not a money problem. It is a sophistication of technology problem, and so long as there is so much money to be made because we underprice our inventory, and you can move it freely wherever you want to move it freely after you do it, it literally is just an arms race. Because if I spend an extra $10 million, he's going to spend an extra $11 million, and we're just going to keep.
Are the
ratcheting
entrepreneurs that are scalpers just that good at being entrepreneurs that they continue to outdo the next step?
Yeah, listen, there's a lot of attention on this right now, and I think rightfully so. Everything from anti-bot legislation at the federal level, which is great. It's a good step forward. It's good education, but the reality is, until it's enforced, and there isn't any enforcement right now, that's not going to help. To podcasts, right? I mean, the Freakonomics did a podcast this week on the economics of ticketing and what creates these incentives and why we do what we do. But at the end of the day, yeah, there's that much money to be made, and you can get that sophisticated with high frequency trading software that is very, very similar in our business to the way that it is done, through co-location on the market trades. Which has been well documented in books like Michael Lewis's Flash Boys. So it's hard to understate the sophistication of some of the technology that's out there to be able to fight this. So, I'll do my shameless plug for Verified Fan just because
which is where I was going to go to next.
Good, because we're just incredibly excited about what we're doing. But that's to answer your question a little bit more directly, Jim. The challenge that we've always had is because there's such an incentive to cheat the system because there's so much money to be made. The arms race has always been focused at that moment of the 10 a.m. on sale, right? So when Adele goes on sale or Beyonce goes on sale, as you guys well know, the amount of people that are coming to the website, scalpers, bots, human beings, actual fans, versus the number of tickets that are available is ridiculously, incongruent. So at that moment where the Ticketmaster systems, which are the best in the world by a country mile, not that I'm biased, at handling that scale, it's still a very, very unique computing problem, right? It's like a Black Friday, every Saturday. You have that much traffic coming in. And at that moment where you've got that much computing brain power just handling the scale to get rid of the tickets, we've also got the challenge of we're going to try and find out in that moment if you are a bot or if you are a human being and push the bot to the background and put the fan to the front. And truth be told, we've made a ton of progress on that, but that's an incredibly difficult problem to solve in a normal environment, right? I'm trying to protect email systems or banking systems, more or less in that crush of traffic that you see almost in no other inventory. So what Verified Fan does at its core, at its essence, is try and remove the winning of the on sale and stop rewarding speed and start to reward identity and engagement. And that's a fancy way to say, instead of trying to identify if you're a bot or a human being at the time of the on sale, we're going to have you pre-register, and we're going to separate out our time and give ourselves more time between the time you register and the time that we actually give you access to sell the ticket that isn't boxed. Those types of indicators. Why are
people being so critical of this? Because it is seeming to get a ton of press. And obviously, you two had some dings technology-wise. But in general, why is it getting so much attention?
It's getting good attention, and I think it's getting primarily good attention. But I think it's not perfect, and it's getting better over time, but it's never going to be perfect for a whole bunch of different reasons, not the least of which is if I'm an actual fan and I bought I was identified properly as an actual fan of Bruce Springsteen, and I bought 2 tickets through the Verified Fan program, but I bought them at $70 because that's what the program allowed me to do because I was a real fan and that's what Springsteen wanted to do, but they're actually worth $5,000. I might flip those tickets, even if I'm a real fan. So you're never going to get the end product, which is what they point to of, how there's still tickets on StubHub. Well, the goal is not to eliminate the secondary market. You're never going to eliminate the secondary market unless you're perfectly market priced with every seat, which is not necessarily the goal for most acts. So we're trying to limit and identify the people who are most likely to go to the event and give them an advantage. So if we can do that in advance, and then we can hand out codes and then meter that purchase process, we can have a lot of success in making sure that they're actual fans and not people who intend to resell, even though some of them will resell. And the numbers are clear. When we don't do Verified Fan, you see tens and tens of percentages of the total house show up in the secondary market. And when you do Verified Fan, we're seeing on average, 3 to 7% on the secondary market. It's a dramatic decrease, and the data is what it is. It's a fact.
All right, I want to open it up to the room because I know everybody's been clamoring. Randy?
Hi, I'm Randy Levy from Rose Presents in Minneapolis, a longtime customer of yours. Could you maybe talk about the longer view of blockchain and how that'll affect ticketing and possibly be woven into the value of the ticket continuing to come back to the show?
Yeah, no, it's a great question and a really, really interesting technology that we're spending some time with as well. So Verified Fan is one of the ways that we're trying to solve a lot of this problem, but there's 2 kind of key problems that have plagued the industry since the beginning of time that continue to plague the industry, from which almost all other problems derive, right? Number 1 is price. We don't price it according to the market, sometimes intentionally, sometimes not. Sometimes we don't do it, but we have an intentional reason for not doing it. But pricing in general is number 1. And for us, identity is number 2. So ticketing is largely anonymous. I buy 4 tickets. You know the person who bought. It's not when I show up at the event, you actually don't know if it's me who showed up at the event. And even when we went from paper tickets that were completely transferable outside of any system and we went to digital ticketing, we replaced paper tickets with a barcode, which is, guess what? still completely anonymous and still completely transferable outside of the system. So I can print 4 tickets off of my printer. I can make 8 copies. I can introduce fraud. I can give them to Dan. And as a result, whether it's a 1,000-seat venue or 60,000 seats for the Super Bowl, we don't know who's in the venue. And there are all kinds of problems that flow from that. So in solving those 2 problems, we've created a bunch of different products, not the least of which is yield management and pricing tools and ways to combat, the inefficiency of that pricing by allowing people to sell the ticket at that right price to a fan. Verified Fan is an example of that. But non-barcode ticketing technology, true digital ticketing technology, is the second way that we'll start to do that. So we have spent a lot of time over the last 3 years building a system called Ticketmaster Presence, not as in presents, but who is present at the venue. And it is next generation digital ticketing. It doesn't have barcodes, which means in order to transfer that ticket, you transfer it electronically through a system, and it's not intended to block transferability per se, unless content decides that that's something that they want to do. But it allows us to use technology to make sure that we can have, for the first time, a full chain of custody every time that ticket trades hands, right? So Jared Smith bought those tickets. I transferred one to my wife. I sold one on StubHub. That ticket gets bought by somebody else, so on and so forth. And I have full visibility of where that ticket has transferred and ultimately who shows up at the venue with that ticket. We're not using blockchain to build that today, but blockchain would be a very analogous technology to be able to do that type of system. And this is not in the future. This is something that we're building right now, and it was a central tenet of the deal that we just did with the NFL, who's going to move almost entirely to this digital ticketing system over a 2-year period from 2018 and 2019 seasons. So it's here, and once you solve that identity problem, right, you solve a ton of security problems. You can create immense relationships from a personalization standpoint. The data that you glean from just who's there and how old are they and do they come to more shows and how can we get, there's a whole basket of really, really good outcomes from knowing who those people are and where those tickets are going. And it's not unheard of, right? I mean, it's the same thing that you do in airlines today, right? You can't transfer a ticket anonymously and then somebody else shows up and sits in your airline seat. So for safety reasons, security reasons, and a whole bunch of other things, it's the natural progression and something that we've deeply invested in, and I think are on the verge of something really great.
Who's next? Who else got a question?
I do. Tom Chauncey from Partisan Arts. So sort of picking up on what you were just speaking about. So transferability seems that if you were to eliminate transferability, much of all of these other problems would go away. Is that a legislative issue? I believe in certain states, transferability, it's required that it must be transferable. Is that a legislative problem? And if you could eliminate transferability, would you endorse that or not?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So it's a complex answer in terms of whether or not it's legislated or not. There are rules in only a handful of places that prohibit non-transferable tickets. New York is chief among them, but it's been controversial in New York. The reality is, the fact of the matter is that the quickest, cleanest, easiest way for us to make sure that Bruce Springsteen can sell a ticket at the price that he wants, even if it's dramatically lower than the market will bear, is to make sure that the person who bought that ticket can't transfer it to somebody else. Therefore, they can't profit on it if Bruce doesn't want them to profit on it. And today, as long as you've got paper tickets, it's almost impossible to be able to do that. Digital tickets create an opportunity if the content wants to underprice to be able to do that. And ultimately, we serve content, right? We don't make these decisions as a ticketing company. We provide technology to make sure that Bruce Springsteen has the tools to be able to sell his tickets at the prices he wants directly to his fans, or the NFL. And in some cases, it's going to enable more freedom and more open ticketing because we can now validate a ticket for an NFL team that's sold on a secondary marketplace, and because it's digital, we can track that ticket across those markets, and we can keep those people safe, and we can eliminate fraud. So in certain instances, I think it will get broader distribution in multi-channel ways, and in certain instances, I think it's going to shrink that canvas where an artist trying to underprice its ticket to reward fans is the best example that I can give you. So,
is Springsteen the gold standard of the artist that wants the most their fans to be protected?
Well, I think he's the easiest example because it's been a big portion of his message for a very long time.
So if you can please him, you're pleasing almost everybody else in the artist side?
Yeah, I think so. In many respects. But I'll reference Michael again. Michael is very tuned into artists being great brand managers, right? I mean, these guys, everybody says, why do we underprice our tickets? Well, because an artist is a great brand manager, and they're playing the long game with their brand, and they want to make sure that I balance between how much money am I making, and how do I make sure that I reward my true fans. And that's why, in a lot of respects, I don't think it's about non-transferability, and it's not about pricing every ticket to market. It's about a mix. And in some cases, you look at Verified Fan and you say, well, could we sell, some portion of the house, the best seats in the house, under the Verified Fan program and tie that to non-transferability, and that will reward our best fans who engaged with us over some series of campaign like we did with Taylor Swift Camp, and then that will allow us on the rest of the house to actually be more aggressive in pricing that house closer to market. A really good example of that is a guy named Jeffrey Seller, who's the producer of Hamilton on Broadway, right, which is a juggernaut of all juggernauts on Broadway, and has certainly crossed over to mainstream music and entertainment and a whole bunch of other things. But he calls it the Robin Hood strategy, right? Which is they do non-transferable, will call only tickets, sometimes for $10 or sometimes for, just for free to local endowments or students and those types of things. And the way that they fund that is because they have premium tickets that are market priced, that are really, really akin to what a secondary market price is going to be. So it's again, counterintuitive in some ways, but the ability to actually charge market price in many, many ways rewards fans by allowing the artist to sell to true fans at discounted prices.
Who's got the next question?
David Limitani, Nibblestick Entertainment. I had a little confusion on the Schlesinger versus Ticketmaster lawsuit. I thought that the lawsuit had something to do with the overcharging of service fees, but it doesn't seem like those fees have gone down at all. And then a follow-up to that question is the vouchers that were given out in return after the lawsuit was settled. It never seemed like the vouchers applied to anything that was meaningful. I didn't know if the vouchers were based off shows that weren't selling well or how those were determined. Just if you could talk about that lawsuit.
Can't really give you a ticket to a sold-out show.
Well, yeah, but true.
Yeah, that's some of it. I can't go deep into that litigation and the settlement. By and large, it wasn't because service charges were that service charges were overcharged, and as a result, we had to lower them. As I think we firmly established here, even the service charges we don't have a whole lot of control over. Increasingly these days, we take this portion, and then the promoter is establishing how much they want to make. This guy
back here. What about some of these platforms that
you are who?
I am your good friend, Jake Gold. What about some of these platforms that I don't know the gentleman's name. He works with Light, and then there's Twickets, which is operating in Europe, which is these platforms that are allowing tickets to be resold, but only from fan to fan with upsell. Do you see yourself getting into that business, or maybe even purchasing one of those companies?
Yeah, I mean the fan to fan portion of that is really a function of whether or not those platforms create an opportunity for somebody to sell over face value and take money out of those systems in that way. And I think for us the challenge is deeper and it's more complex than that. In that you unless you combine some technology and some transferability and some of these marketplace rules into a combination of solutions, it gets really hard to just eliminate it. In other words, you could apply a market and say we're only going to allow fans to transfer at face value on our market, but if you still have a paper ticket, there's nothing to prevent somebody from taking that same ticket, selling it on StubHub for a profit, and then away they go. So it's the combination of a lot of these tools that really solves the problem. I think there's merit, and some of those products are great and great ideas. But we really have to combine some of these things to get at the root.
Is there moments where you feel like these on sales in the first minute where you see 5,000 blow out, that 4,000 may just be going to scalpers?
Well,
it's funny because you add that second show and nobody bought any tickets, and then we have 2 empty nights because nobody bought the scalper tickets, nobody bought the other tickets, but we thought the demand was there.
Yeah, listen, I think it is an indicator. It's not always proof, but it's certainly an indicator that if I sold the thing out in 1 minute, that I probably underpriced the thing to begin with. So there's a balance between, hey, I want that big bang. I'm going to underprice it because A, I want it to sell out in a minute so that I know it's sold and I don't have the risk, and B, I can say that I sold out in a minute, and slowing that down so that I get more of the lift over time, but maybe I introduce some more risk or those types of things. So there's definitely a balance there, but I don't. Aspiring to sell out in 1 minute is tough, right? I think there's a balance of how do I maximize the yield and the amount of tickets that go into the hands of fans, and minimize risk and make my big impact. And that's the grail that we're all working towards for sure. But we've got more tools to attack that today than we have historically.
One last question.
Hey, Jared, I'm Scott Mullen. I'm from the TaxSire Center in Quad Cities.
Now you've named it for me. Thank you.
Which I was
going to iWireless Center and I missed it.
Hold on, let's get it straight. The name of the venue is now what?
Tax Slayer.
Metal as fuck, baby.
And so, I know you were an intern at the CVB in the Quad Cities?
I started there, yep.
How do you
job offer back here in a second?
How do you go from being an intern to being in charge of $1 billion company? Like, you talked about relationships, you've talked about other things, but what is the one thing? Are you like Rain Man with analytics? What is the?
I think I firmly established that that's not true.
What advice can you give to move up as fast as you have?
That's David Marcus, isn't it? Rain Man for analytics.
Listen, I can't explain it. It's a fair question, but there's no secret sauce. I'm one of the luckiest guys in the business. There's no question that I was just given lots and lots of opportunities. I was in the right place at the right time at each one of those things. I work hard. I always have worked hard, and there's no substitute for hard work. But the only thing that's guided me through it is what I said earlier, which is I try really, really hard to take care of the folks that have taken care of me and to pay it forward a little bit. And then when you combine that with a couple of good breaks here and there, sometimes you end up with a real opportunity to do something. To do something special. I learned this business from people like Charlie Schilling, who sat in your chair at one point in his career, and Marla Ostroff, who to this day works for us in New York, and a whole host of other people that were kind enough to take me under their wing and teach me the business and give me opportunities and give me shots, and and to go from all of those guys, and now to get that same kind of guidance from guys like Michael Rapino, and spend some time with Irving Azoff and Tim Lywicki and some of these guys. It's still surreal for a guy from the Quad Cities who's rooting for the Hawkeyes on the weekends, but
hey, Jared,
appropriately so.
Hi, Vince Bannon. Hey, Jared. So I'm actually a recovering Ticketmaster client.
Dreskin will be proud.
But how much technology debt do you feel that you're dealing with your platform right now? And second part of this question is, if you could actually say start anew, like take your platform and like have it look, because obviously there's a lot of private equity money going into ticketing, would you actually say take a look at it from a completely different way of what your platform operates right now, to like say, oh, if I could do this, if I could do an Eventbrite or whatever platform out there that you see that would be really compelling and changing?
Vince asked the last question that I could spend like 4 hours in painful detail, so I'll answer it at the highest
In 27
level.
parts.
Yes, it's part number one, part A. At the highest level, what I would say, Vince, is it's a 40-year-old business. Of course, we've got technical debt. There are 3-year-old businesses that have tech debt, and we struggle with that every day. And you struggle with the things that you want to move the platform forward, and some things that you got to fix that your customers don't see a feature because you're fixing something that's a little bit older. But I made the point earlier of all the investment that Live Nation's put into the business, and that has been the key for us to, for a business that had been classically underinvested in, to be able to go pay down a lot of that debt, create, things like abstraction layers that allow us to move faster on top of our old platforms, and still get more product out. And that product delivery, velocity that we've had over the last couple of years has been amazing. But, the core of the Ticketmaster systems, the Ticketmaster host system, is still the core inventory system, and it is still the best in the world at what it does, at transactions per second, and its reliability and its stability and so on and so forth. So, so the answer is, yeah, of course we do. We're managing that. The big investment has been a big portion of what's allowed us to manage that, and at the same time put a bunch of product out. And if we were to start over again, sure, you'd make some different changes. There's no question that you would. But that being said, one of the things that has allowed us to, again, compete in all of these different verticals at the same time and compete fairly well is you're always building the next thing on the back of the thing that you already have. So we don't have to go reinvent everything. We're reinventing the things that matter the most, and we have some things that are, just good enough. In some instances, and good enough is okay in those, but you have to be great in a whole bunch of the other things that really matter, and those are the places where we've spent a lot of that investment in terms of pricing and yield and identity-based ticketing and so on and so forth. So it's a great question, and one that we spent a lot of time thinking about.
I can't think of a better place to finish. You have to be one of the best speakers we've ever had. I want to thank you so much. We got your Promoter 101 whoopee cushion and an Emporium hoodie. Thank you for coming, Jared Smith, ladies and gentlemen. This was so much fun. Big thanks to Jared for making time for us and joining us here in Aspen.
Hey, it's Mark David, Steve Strange, Toby Leighton-Pope, Stuart Galbraith, Simeon Galperin, I'm Ralph James, Ted Cohen,
Julia Frank,
Jeff Goodman, Jamie Adler, and Frank Wing, Doug Edley, David Klein, Stephen Riff, Tom Chauncey,
and we're on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Dan, that time of the week, we got to jump into some of the Promoter 101 tweets of the week. Can you humor me and explain what was going through your mind when you wrote each of these Promoter 101 tweets? How about we start here? When a tour manager is auditing a settlement on a losing date, as if there's any possible way to change their way out.
Man, just stop the bleeding already. Don't pour any more lemon on the wound.
When an agent acts super tough through email, but is afraid to discuss over the phone.
Yeah, I know your game.
When a territorial agent passes on a date that the responsible agent already confirmed.
Sorry, but I think you might be a tad out of the loop, my friend. But the counts are fucking solid on this dates. And it's selling really well. It's been up for weeks.
When an agent fails to respond to a challenge and comes back weeks later with, what do you mean I lost the date I didn't release?
This one falls under how you treat people. And you should always remember to treat people as how you would want them to treat you. Respond to fucking emails, man.
That does it for Promoter 101 Tweets of the Week. Make sure to follow Dan on Twitter. He's @TheJew. And if you have your own Promoter 101 thoughts, feel free to tweet them at us or email them over to us. Anything that makes us smile is going to get used on the air.
Lucy Lawler-Freese, Rival Entertainment and the Fox Theater in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm on Promoter 101.
Celebrating some birthdays this week, December 8th through the 14th, 2017.
Friday, Paradigm's Andy Adowitz, Rebecca Shapiro, Randy Nichols, Paul Buck, and Tom Baggett.
On Saturday, wishing a happy birthday to Patrick Jordan, Tom LaPinna, and Maria Cantone.
Sunday, UTA's Justin Hill, Jenny Song, and Zach Ruskowski.
On Monday, 12/11, Michael Electronico.
Tuesday, Gary Lane.
On Wednesday, we're wishing a happy birthday to Molly Fitzgerald and Ryan Blazer.
Thursday, 12/14, the Showboxes, Jonah McCurry and Randy Henner, legendary indie promoter in New York.
Happy birthday to everybody from the gang of Promoter 101.
Hello, this is Sarah Mertz,
Julia Frank,
Zariel Hyatt,
Ali Spagnola,
LX,
Marsha Flessick,
Andrea Johnson,
and we're on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Appearing live on Promoter 101.
If you want to reach out to us, send us an email at steiny@promoter101.net.
On our next episode of this podcast, we have a mega episode featuring AEG's Mike Descharme, Ground Control's touring Eric Dimnenstein, Six-Man Boat Tours Anthony Diaz, concert promoter Heath Miller, and artist and author Ari Herstand.
Until then, from Aspen, Colorado, high amongst the mountains, we're wishing you sold-out shows for the weeks to come. Cheers.
Cheers, motherfuckers.
My name is Reese Ryan Stemmer, and you can watch my daddy on Promoter 101.
Ba-da-ba-ba, ba-da.